Hello and welcome back to animating and learning using the Moho manual tutorial book, the tutorial manual. And on the next chapter that is coming up is how to create simple 3D constructions, and this is a pro only feature. And then we can read along quickly on the initial paragraph. Moho is primarily a 2D program, although it does have some 3D tools for positioning the camera and individual layers. Still, even if you position layers in a 3D landscape and fly around them with the camera, each vector layer is really just a 2D plane in a 3D space. So you can read the rest of it by yourself. I am gonna skip and jump into creating the shape. So creating the faces. The first step is to create the faces of the cube in the initial empty layer of your new project, which is, we have a new layer. This is our new layer. Let's call it, okay, let's delete that. I've already made the cube, so I'm gonna remake it with you guys so you can understand it better. So from here, let's say layer 1, that is our new layer, and then we use our rectangle tool, Command Shift, and we can create our square. We don't need that, we can switch that off for now, and we don't need that either. And so the first one is to correct our corners. So I believe the square must be centered at the layer origin. It must be truly square, not a rectangle, and should touch the top and bottom of the viewable area exactly. To draw the square, press Alt and Shift for Windows users or Command Shift for Mac users, and click at the layer of origin point and Alt key and draw the square outward from point at which you click, and the Shift key will constrain the rectangle to create a square with 4 equal sides. What's important for this square is that the corners are at, I believe this is -1 and 1, and then the other one is also at 1 and 1, and then this one is at 1, or is it -1 and 1? We will get there at the end. It's a bit tricky. I usually get it confused. I don't usually use this one, and then -1, -1, or 1. That is supposed to be 1, and this one will be 1. I assume, no, it's not. Let's try -1, and there we have it. -1 and -1 is shown in the following figure. But we move on. That is our square, and as you can see, mine is in orange and the manual one is in red. You can select transform point tool and there optionally, and we've done all that. So we skip again, and you can read up on this if you want to. And then now the next stage is to, you can manually enter, select the shape with the select shape tool, then fill the square with the color of your choice. So you can also change whatever color you want, green, blue, blah blah blah. I love the purple. The cube is purple, but for this one let's stick to the manual and use red. And then in the layer window, click the new layer button, that is this one, create the new layer and create a group, and let's call that cube. And then with that cube we go into layer 1 and we duplicate it 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times rather, not 6. And then it's supposed to have layer 6, and then it's looking like that. It's also looking like that. So we're on the right track. We are definitely on the right track. And then so select the lowest layer, which will be layer 1. And then layer 1, we want position. We select the transform layer. We want position Z is a 1. And we press enter. And then now select layer 2 and set XY to 0, which is 0, 0, and Z to -1. And then the layer depth setting, layer 2, the setting get more complex from here up. Select layer 3, and then its X, and set its X value at 1 and remain 0. Then the new thing is we use the rotate layer XY tool, and it says use rotation 90 for Y. Enter. And then we go onto layer 4. We go back to our transform layer, and it says position X is at -1. And then rotation is at 90 on the Y rotation. And then we go to layer 5, and it says back to transform layer, and we go Y rotation, that is 1. Enter. And then 0, 0. And then X rotation, now we're doing X rotation, not the Y rotation. So X rotation is at 90. Enter. And then layer 6, our last and final layer, we go back to transform layer, and it says the Y rotation is at -1. And the rotation, X rotation, is at 90. At this point, the cube is basically finished, but it's a little too big to see on the workspace. Use the transform layer tool on the cube group layer to make the entire thing a bit smaller. So also, it doesn't really matter if we had not done accurate points. I believe we could have maintained our size. And we bring down our cube. The layers went in the layers, in the group layer. And then now the next thing you have to do is depth sorting. The final step required to finish the cube is to turn on depth sorting. Double click the cube layer to bring up the layer settings dialog. In the depth sort tab, turn on the checkboxes marked sort layers by depth and sort by true distance. So that is, we double click, depth sort, sort by layers depth, sort by true distance, apply, OK. And the first checkbox tells Moho to draw the back faces of the cube first, then the front ones. The second checkbox is a different way of sorting the layers that is mostly used for 3D construction like this cube. And then we can go into our orbit workspace, and we have our cube. And zoom into there, and we have our cube perfectly rotating in a 3D space. And then the next chapter will be 3D shape design. We'll do that in our next video, but for this video it ends here, and I will also show you in the part B of this video. It's actually not ending here, but part B of this video, follow on to that, where I use the same tutorials we just learned and created a building using PSD files that I made in Procreate. We can explore the cube animations, how to work in 3D, using them to animate something really cool. So what I want to do is animate a building. So I have artwork that I've imported in and this could be artwork you've done in Procreate or Photoshop. And then so I have this file where I have in the building, I have my front, the front here where I have my windows, my door, and then I have my roof, and I have the side left, the side. So obviously it will be a flat like the cube, how we did it in the cube. So you take that concept and you import it as well. You create those layers, the side left, the side right, and you've got your tower or building or whatever it could be, a box with the design on. So I just feel, of course, in Moho, you can try and have a little bit of 3D, some objects. You can, create some cool stuff. And others, of course, they would use Blender. So, but for great results, you would want to use Blender. But for me, I try not to use any 3D software because the learning curve in 3D software is a whole lot, and I'm still learning the advanced stuff in Moho and other animation software. So going into 3D is a whole lot. So here I want to show you, you can do the same concept that we did in the cube. So let's say for the front, you also create your Z on the Z axis, and same process that we did for. So let me open the cube here. Same concept we have. So we have, let's say, the front here, and it's 90, and front here will be 1. So at first I did it at 1 and then started editing it out. So let's say we put a 1, and then you can rotate it, right? Let's say we've rotated, and we can see that there's a little gap there that is left, and then so you can go back in there and then start editing it out on the Z axis, moving it in and out, in and out. And then I settled at 0.90, and of course you can calculate it or be more accurate when you're drawing, but when I was drawing it was just a quick sketch and I imported it really quickly, so I wasn't really taking care of my sizes or anything. But if you use softwares like Affinity, you can then import it and have like an accurate, a proper rectangle, an accurate rectangle, accurate points like what we did with the cube. So it's more or less the same concept. So what I did is I corresponded every part of it, every layer. So we're back in the roof, I would also correspond it to the roof, and I was using the cube that we learned in the tutorial, the manual. And you follow those, you do the same concept where there's X, Y, and Z axis. You follow the same thing, flip it across, and your rotation tool, you do the same thing as we did in the cube. And then you come down to a finished building. So now you have your switch of the cube, you have your back, and we have that. That's the side, that's the back, that's the front, that's the other side, and that's the bottom, and that's the top. And of course it's not as accurate as it should be because I was rushing, but if you take time you can actually have a nice, really accurate building, and then you can multiply them and have multiple cities, multiple building blocks, and you can have a nice city view. You have another one, and then of course you create the orders that they need to be in accurately, and then you can have your street with the buildings. You have to correct the layer order and get in there. And that's how I did the animation at the beginning of the show, and you go into your timeline. Okay, let's reset the view first. We go into our timeline and we play with the rotation tool. This is what we play with to animate, let's say here. So maybe if you have talking buildings, you can use this to animate little movement, blah 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 blah, And So I have my city in a group layer, and then I play with the rotation tool when I'm animating, and I can move it this way, I can move it that way. So I will, and of course another thing to remember is using the Z axis to create distance, and that will also aid in having your camera. Let's say we wanted to go further back and we say -2, and then it's really back, can go even further, -5, and then so when we come in and maybe rotate it like this, it's further away, and then when we use our camera we get to these buildings first before we get to the other building, and then you can then play again with your rotation tool and create some cool depth effect. And then of course you need to put this building behind, and if we bring it down behind with our layer order, you can then have it go hide behind, and it's a pretty cool thing to have. And you can create your buildings, you can create little objects, and there you have it. That is your 3D cities, buildings. You can have cars moving around, and then you can play around with camera movements, and it's pretty simple. All you have to do is follow the concept that we did in the cube, and you can create buildings, garages. It's endless really. And of course you didn't have to learn Blender or any 3D software. It was just a quick 5-minute tutorial or 5-minute example in the manual, and already you have multiple buildings with art on them. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool. You can import PSD files and use the XYZ axis and create really cool concepts. And hope to see you in the next video. I know I was away for a while, but I'm back, and I won't promise videos, but I'll just say when they're there, I'll drop them and release them. So see you on the next video.